Kobe Bryant's buzzer-beating winning shot for Lakers to win 107-105 against Miami Heat in the 2009 NBA season. Or Italians Roberto Baggio, the soccer legend, who missed out that all-important free kick at the 1994 Soccer World Cup against Brazil. And the miracle of Augusta, where Tiger Woods was able to pull off a seemingly impossible putt at the 16th hole of Augusta's Masters in 2005. And to this day, the image still haunts us, how Alan Donald's legs froze, preventing South Africa from taking that last one run against Australia in the 1999 World Cup cricket to book a place in the finals. Hi, I'm Manik Senanayake. Through this video, I will explore as to why certain athletes choke or falter under the bright lights, while some are able to pull out some of the most amazing performance when it matters most on the big stage. So is there a prescription to mitigate choking, better yet eradicate those elements or variables which prevents us from performing our best on the big stage? So is it got to do with our preparation? Is it training? Or is there much more direct explanations, like certain athletes such as inherently have a better mental strength over others to absorb pressure and perform under stressful situations? So if it is so, is it genetically related? Or is there a much more simpler explanation? For example, we humans are made up of complex structures, neurons, and that complexity makes us imperfect. And those imperfections make our performance unpredictable to the extent that we choke without any explanation, simply due to a flaw in human design. Or can we just attribute to the randomness of life, the forces out there like karma, destiny, fate? And you find that choking is not just confined to athletes or sports alone. It transcends different spheres. For example, in public speaking, or taking up a high-pressure exam, or even a simple thing as meeting your dream boy or girlfriend for the first time. You just freeze up. So it makes sense for us to kind of deconstruct and assess to figure out the whole process leading up to what causes choking, and to understand as to why and what happens biologically inside the body and the mind of an athlete before trying to figure out the ways to overcome choking. And you'll find that it is multifaceted. There are several complex phenomena at work. So what are the red flags or early warning signs that give the indication that process leading up to choking has commenced? See, your body initiate both a physiological, which is a physical aspect, as well as a psychological, which is the mental aspect, a response called the stress response. This is what is commonly known among us as butterfly in your stomach. Both these physiological as well as the psychological phenomena work in tandem. They feed off each other and complements each other. First of all, your palms become sweaty. Your muscles become intense or contract. And your heart rate increases, which causes both your blood pressure as well as your breathing to increase. This narrows your attention and impairs your ability to process information momentarily. And this can have a negative impact on your focus and ultimately ending up in choking. So you find that over the years, there has been tremendous work done, research and empirical studies in the area of sports psychology and mental muscle training. But for the purpose of this video, I will share with you 4 psychological reasons from a theoretical interpretation point of view as to what causes choking. So number 1 is what is termed as distraction theory. This happens very often in game situations, in highly stressed situations where your ability to process information is affected involuntarily by focusing or paying attention to unwanted, irrelevant sites. So much so that it ends up you missing out some of the key information. You shift your focus to unhelpful stimuli, for example, spectators, stadium noise, or any threat approaching you. For example, on rugby, under the high ball, for a fraction of a second, you tend to defocus and focus on the tackler who is approaching you. That distraction creates a neural pain that leads to choking, and as a result, that distraction makes you become victim to that particular moment, and you lose catching the ball. Number 2 is what is called ironic effect. This is again in game situation, in highly stressful, high anxiety moments. You try to suppress intentionally all those what if thoughts, things that could go wrong. So what happens, your mind and your brain is being dominated by things that could go wrong, and you end up choking and doing exactly what you don't want to achieve. For example, if you take a free kick in soccer, before the free kick, if your mind is occupied all the things that could go wrong, and you visualize where you kick the ball outside, you ends up doing exactly that. This got to do with visualization. Number 3 psychological reason is called single detection theory. This occurs when athletes show extreme anxious behavior. They are too eager to get on with the task at hand. They want to get things moving, maybe due to overconfidence. So what happens is, because you become hypervigilant and super sensitive, the brain nervous system gets too excited and forces you to perform a task way before the time. You're all aware of, if you can recall, how Usain Bolt jumped the gun at a false start in the IAAF World Championships in Daegu in 2011. So it can happen to the best of the best athletes. It's just you need to figure out how to manage your excitement and stay within the element. The final and the 4th cognitive trigger is the most common. It is known as conscious processing. This happens when, given the significance of the sporting moment, what stage of the game, whether it is semi-finals or finals or the last few balls or the last 5 minutes, or what is at stake, what do you stand to lose, what are the crowd expectations, degree of involvement, degree of hope, all these pressures an athlete can succumb to that. And so much so that you tend to give a greater significance to the perceived outcome of the game. And instead of trusting your abilities, skill, the natural flow, your instincts, you force an outcome. This happens when you overanalyze and overthink your task at hand. This is what is commonly known as paralysis by analysis. So when conscious intervention happens to autopilot mode and not allowing the subconscious mind to carry out a task, these conscious intentions happen in a location in the brain called dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This area usually takes care of all the control functions, working memory, carrying out of execution of tasks, prevention, inhibition, impulse control, where there is absolute conscious thought associated with all these elements. But when it comes to trusting your guts and instinct, that happens in a different location called cortex basal ganglia thalamus, which in short we known as cortex loop. So you find a lot of professional athletes through repetitive training, they build that confidence and they trust the process and their abilities. When this happens, they operate in that space and allow the subconscious autopilot mode to operate more often than not. This is the time when a lot of commentators, I'm sure you must have heard, when they say, can he hold his nerve? Can he stay calm? Can he stay cool? Does he trust his instincts? And no matter whatever the task, if you overanalyze the situation, that could have detrimental impact. For example, simple thing as a regulation 25-meter penalty kick in rugby, or an uncontested free throw in basketball, or a simple thing as riding a bicycle, right? If you overanalyze the situation, most likely you can end up choking that simple activity. So choking and overanalysis doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't. And the simpler the task, the greater the expectation that you invite on us and greater propensity for you to choke. So the all-important question remains, can we overcome choking? Or at least mitigate it to acceptable levels? The answer is yes. Through timely interventions such as mental muscle training, psychological therapy, cognitive conditioning, you can reduce your propensity of choking. I'm going to share with you 6 quick techniques very briefly how you can overcome choking. Number 1 is called continuous competitive training. It sounds very obvious, but about mastering your skills over and over again and perfecting your craft, there is no substitute for training. They say that 1% is aspiration and 99% is perspiration, which is true. See, what happens with training is that you become familiar with the process. And once you become familiar with the process, it becomes routine over a period of time. And with this routine, you tend to build more confidence on your abilities and skill set. And you start trusting your skills. So similarly, when your execution is automatic and where there is no interventions of conscious thought, you tend to perform better because the process is natural. It comes from a place of proven abilities, confidence and trust. Michael Jordan holds the record in NBA for most number of buzzer beaters. In 9 times he has taken the ball on the buzzer to make that winning shot to get his team over the gain line. That happens only through self-confidence, self-belief and trusting your own skill through years of continuous repetitive training. And you find that there are things in your game plan or your skill development that should be best left for autopilot.
What about the last shot you ever took as a member of the Chicago?
And great athletes know how to build their confidence over a period of time so that they, more often than not, they operate in the autopilot mode.
The Bulls can win it right here. The Bulls can win it. Unbelievable. 13 seconds left. Jordan left side.
I practice as if I'm playing in a game. So when the moment comes in the game, it's not new to me. So when you get to that moment, you don't have to think. Instinctively, things happen.
Number 2 is about reframing state. What feeds your brain is absolutely imperative. It's all about staying focused on what is within your control and be intelligent and realistic about your expectations and your limitations, your abilities. For example, if you are an athlete and who does 200 meters, so you practice hard and you show up on the big day and during the competition, you produce a PB, your personal best. So you should be overjoyed, but you end up at 4th place. You should not be disappointed and feel that you are a failure, because all what you can ask from yourself is that they have done better, which you have. So it's a time for celebration because you don't have any control of the skills of your competition. But that realization that this is where you want to go, this is where I am, understanding gap is being mature. And that is about reframing your state. So what is uncontrollable, you should not really worry about. It's all about pushing limits, and every time you do that, you achieve success. And also make sure that when reframing, you try and avoid entertaining low self-esteem, thoughts of negativity, self-doubt, and more importantly, creating unrealistic expectations. These are all toxic recipes for triggering choking. Don't let your ambitions outpace your abilities and training demands. Great athletes know how to disassociate these. They gain composure and figure out by doing a quick review where they are and then get busy in putting the work. So the number 3 technique is about reproducing or recreating game conditions during your practice sessions or training environments. We all know that during practice we break so many times our PB or the personal best. You run faster times, you jump the furthest, you clear greater heights, you throw greater distances, but fail to reproduce those conditions during competition. See, it all comes down to how familiar you are with the real moment of experience before the event, so that there are no surprises and you are less intimidated. See, the brain responds well to familiar conditions. For example, if you are training for 100 meters, run in front of a crowd. If you are kicking at goal in rugby, try and practice in front of a crowd so that all eyes on you kind of anxieties that stems from that kind of environment you're already exposed to. And this technique of replicating the real events or real conditions beforehand is not only limited for sports as well. For example, if you're taking up a professional exam, if you're practicing, don't just practice with a timer, because time is an absolute stress trigger. And also, for example, if you are going for an interview, don't practice alone one-on-one in front of the mirror. Get another friend and practice with him so that the real life interview situation is recreated beforehand. Number 4 is the technique of visualization. This is a very important as well as very effective tool to overcome choking. This is where in your brain you think over and over again through pictures and thought the desired outcome you want to achieve. And you do this regularly for a long period of time, the brain's neural network get organized. It registers a pattern and tells you how to respond way before the event. And this imagery will act as a metaphor for your thoughts to resurrect when the actual event happens. So tools such as incantations, affirmation, you need to have that two-way conversation with your brain and remind that it is possible that you are in control. So when the game time approaches, most of the elite athletes, professional athletes, they get into this pre-game ritual to calm their nerves and not to get distracted. For example, Kobe Bryant, he listened to the Halloween theme song where Mike Myers with his mask, he just assumed that he's putting his mask with no emotions, absolute focus. Even Michael Phelps listened to Eminem music as a pre-game ritual. So you need to figure out what works for you so that it helps really to create that visualization before a big event and to stay within the element. Number 5 is a technique of how to embrace and then rechannel anxiety to advantage. Now we know a lot of athletes, especially professional athletes, they know through psychological interventions how to manage stress and to ensure that it doesn't lead to choking. But to go one step ahead beyond that, we find there are certain athletes who have developed their psychology to extent that they constantly, intentionally look for anxieties to foil their performance. For example, Usain Bolt with his theatrics or pre-game rituals where he interact with the audience, the participants, and make sure that not only he elevates his expectation of himself, but also elevate the expectation of the crowd as well, where he's quite comfortable with all eyes on him. So this kind of approach may not be applicable to every athlete because it's a specialist skill and a lot got to do with your personality, how you view the world. But for most of us, it's about finding that optimum level of anxiety, a single point where you are neither too overconfident, relax or taking things easy. Now you are distracted by information, too anxious. You have to find that right balance. Another quick perspective which I quickly want to share with you is the certain advantage certain athletes have that could really build your self-confidence, trust about your arsenal of tools. For example, Michael Phelps, with his 2-meter wingspan, he's able to have that confidence inbuilt into his psychology. So this can create an amazing level of self-confidence. The sixth and the final technique that I want to leave with you is mindfulness, is the power of the now. And usually anxiety is associated with fear of the unknown. And athletes usually, fear-induced choking happens when you invert so much of undue pressure on yourself. Now fear takes two forms. One fear is that about the future. What will happen? What other things could go wrong? And fear of the past. What if my past failures come back to haunt me? So you have to manage both these two extremes. Fear doesn't happen in the current moment. So if you can develop techniques to be and operate in the now, in the present, that will give absolute focus to achieving your task as well as reduce choking. So techniques such as observation, breathing, listening, meditation are some of the techniques that you can use to develop your mindfulness and self-awareness. Now you find they say that in the NBA basketball there's a 3% less likely chance to score of uncontested free throw as opposed to a shot that you take during play. Is simply because during an uncontested throw, the odds are in favor of you. The propensity to get it right is in favor of you. So your expectations become that much greater. Crowd expectations increases. As a result, you invite undue pressure and this could lead to choking. So finally, the key takeout is that you are committed to a particular sport and you spend so much time, you're constantly looking for ways to improve your craft, you put in the hours and you achieve great successes during practice sessions, and you owe it yourself to reproduce and replicate these conditions when it matters the most and not be denied of opportunity to showcase your true potential capabilities on the big stage and not be controlled by a few mental traps. To do that, it is imperative that you locked in these kind of interventions as mental muscle training, psychological therapy to your training regime. And over time, I'm sure you'll be able to not just mitigate choking, but overcome and able to perform to your true capabilities when it matters the most. Let's build the belief.